Welcome to Casual Shenanigans Tech, a podcast where Dave and I from the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast help you work on your computer builds or your computer-related questions. So, hey Dave, welcome back.
What's up, guys?
And tonight we start the podcast, as we always do, with the Rig Report.
Rig Report. Dun, 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 dun.
Now, interestingly, you and I both reached a very similar conclusion this week.
You without telling me, though.
Well, it kind of just happened, so it's not even here yet, so I hadn't mentioned it. All right. So, 32 gigs of RAM, Dave.
Yeah.
Apparently it's time. Why did you reach that conclusion?
Because I heard that you did.
Oh, really?
Although, more specifically, I was working on some stuff for Norman. I had Cinema and After Effects going at the same time, and I was like, man, I'm using 13 gigs of RAM out of my 16. So I sent you a screenshot, and you're like, oh, well, I have a confession. And then I was ordering about 5 minutes after that.
Yeah, for me, kind of what happened was my backup software, Crash Plan, you have to let it at least have access to 1 gig of memory for every terabyte of backed up data. Well, my backup is... All right, I'm going to have to stop and just do that part again. I have no idea what happened.
Use the words.
Okay.
So one gig of RAM for every terabyte of backup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the way my backup works, I use Crash Plan, and you have to allocate 1 gig of RAM for every terabyte of your backup. And I'm backing up like 3.5 terabytes of stuff, but it does versioning. So there's older versions of things and there's deleted things it keeps for a certain amount of time. So I've got 6.5 terabytes of backed up information. And my backup kept crashing, and they don't really tell you there's a problem. You have to manually allocate the memory. Like, there's forum posts on their website showing you how to open up their command console and do it.
Oh, nice.
Kind of dumb. But, so I was like, well, I'm giving this thing 7 gigs of memory out of 16. I kept an eye on it for a couple days, and it was hitting 5 gigs of memory just when it double-checked versions and stuff. So I was like, maybe it's time to, up this, because memory's decently cheap. I can get the 16 gigs I paid like $130 for in 2011, I think I upgraded to 16 gigs, maybe 2010.
So you were in before that spike.
Yes, I was in like a couple months before the spike, I think. But now that 16 gigs has dropped to $60, $63, which is pretty good. Now it's DDR3 1333. It's not incredible RAM, but for DDR3 it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
So, it's not here yet. Thing with memory is it's only about if you have enough. So I'm not going to see any speed increases, but my computer might feel a little freer while things are rolling.
And I definitely have been pushing it so hard just in the last year that, working from home and all, it's time. And I've got, looks like it was 7996 for mine, and mine's DDR 1600, so it's a tiny bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, not a huge deal.
Yeah. All right. Anything else with your rig changed?
More of just the internet stuff. The connection's been stabilizing again, but as of last Thursday, my poor ISP has run new coax cable like between the hub under the ground on the far side of the street and my modem. Like every piece in the wall, every piece behind the desk, in the box, under the ground, over the street, like every piece has been replaced and recapped. And it's gotten better, but I've still had the connection drop and be a little bit flaky since they last worked on it. It's just weird how it stabilizes, like it should be if it's connected, it's connected kind of thing, you'd think, right? Like, yeah. If you're getting a good signal, you're getting a good signal, but twice now they've come out and replaced cable, and then I noticed it actually like stabilize over 3 or 4 days usually, until it's like totally fine for weeks at a time. So I can't understand what could be causing it, but it's getting better. So there's that.
Cool.
Oh, I do have one final thing for the rig report. Steven and I were actually talking about this today. The GeForce Experience beta. which has an absolutely horrendous UI. It's the program that lets you essentially change your shadow play recording settings like in game, which is a feature I've wanted for a long time, right? Because I use shadow play for probably 2/3 of my recording now, and if I want to like change my frame rate for my recording or my bit rate, I have to open the GeForce Experience program, and we've timed it. It's like 12 to 20 seconds to open that stupid program. It's awful. So the idea of having an overlay in your games where you can turn your mic on and off, change your bit rate, turn shadow recording on and off, I wanted that, so I went and subscribed to the beta, and the UI is fantastic, not looks-wise, but functionality-wise. Like, you can change all your settings on the fly with just a short keyboard command right there in game. Downside is, it's really not stable. The beta causes shadow recording to crash. I would say 1 out of 20 shadow like clip saves, it just crashes instead of saving.
Right, which is a bit bad when the whole point of it is grabbing clips you otherwise weren't ready for.
Yeah, so I have the convenience, which I am making use of changing my settings on the fly, but now I have the inconvenience of having to tab out and open GeForce Experience after I force quit Shadowplay to re-enable it. So I'm still having to use the original control panel to turn it back on after it crashes. So I'm kind of back to square one. But if they get the crashes ironed out, like I said, the UI doesn't look great, but functionality, it's so nice to just change your settings right there in whatever game you're playing.
Cool.
About time, yeah.
All right, you ready to dive into these questions?
Let's do it.
Now, we do have to say, and we've said this before, we're a little bit behind because so many questions have come in. We were doing this every 2 weeks, and then we did every week for a few, and then we're back to every 2 weeks. We're going to try to go back to every week again because this first question or this first email came to us late January, so we're sorry about that, but a lot of you guys have been writing in. If it reaches a point eventually where we can't keep up with all of them, I don't know what we'll do then, but so far we can keep up with all of them as long as we record 1 episode a week, so we're going to try to do that. But our first email is from Nick. Hi gang, Patreon backer Nick here. Really love the show and hope to be listening for many more years. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for supporting us and thank you for listening. He says, I'm looking for some opinions on upgrading my system. I regularly build systems for friends and family, but when it comes to spending my own money rather than someone else's, I can't make a decision. In 2011, I built a fairly high-end gaming PC based around the i5 2500K. Since then, I've upgraded nearly every component, and the rig is still pretty good at 1080p 60 FPS at high settings. However, after some careful budgeting, I'm going to be able to afford to upgrade the older parts of the system. My question is, which of these options do you think would be the best way to spend my money? Okay, so here are the parts he's reusing. Zalman case, Antec True Power 650 watt power supply, his SSD, his hard drive, a GTX 970, a CPU cooler, Windows 10 keyboard, mouse, monitor. Everything but the memory, motherboard, and CPU. And he has given us 3 options. Before I read the 3 options, here are his build requirements. He plays his games at 1080p now, but he'd like the idea of upgrading to 1440p at 60 Hz in the future. He said, I understand this might require either SLI 970s or a GPU upgrade. I'm more than happy to spend a long time overclocking to get the most out of my components. So, with that in mind, you ready to hear the 3 options?
Let's do it.
Option 1, Skylake build, looking at getting the 6600K, an Asus Z170 Pro motherboard, and 8 gigs of DDR4. This is the most expensive option, but will last the longest. Option 2, Haswell build. Keep the existing 8 gigabytes of DDR3 1600 MHz that I already have, and get a 4690K along with an Asus Z97 motherboard. Option 3, I keep everything as it is now and overclock the biscuit out of my 2500K.
Is that a saying?
It might be in his country. I'm not sure. But I really like it. Overclock the biscuit. It is currently at 4.2 gigahertz. That's peasantry for a 2500K, Nick. Come on. I've managed 4.7 gigahertz, but it ran a little hot for my liking. I could get a decent all-in-one water cooler, as my case has room for a 240 millimeter radiator in the roof. This is the cheapest option and would probably tide me over until the next Intel platform release. So he's in the same position a lot of people are in. He has one of the most legendary gaming processors ever, the 2500K. And is it time to upgrade?
Well, let's talk about the Potato Masher just briefly, because you're starting to see the limitations of the CPU just barely coming into play now, right? Like some of the last few tests.
In some games, it'll like very rarely will it max the CPU out when I'm matching PS4 settings.
Right.
But when I'm like, if the game natively runs at 30 on a console and I'm trying to run it at 60 on the Potato Masher, frequently that will completely max it out. Like that'll max the CPU out or something. And usually it still runs fine, but you can tell there's a little bit, it's starting to actually matter. Now, every single game is completely playable, but it doesn't mean it's ideal. But that's an i5 750. So that's 2 generations older than the 2500K. And Nick, Digital Foundry actually did an excellent video, and I'm going to see if I'm going to find a link, and we're going to email that to you. Digital Foundry did an excellent video about, I think it was called Should You Upgrade Your 2500K, and it came out like a week or two ago, where they compared it to, what did they compare it to? They compared it to like the 6600K. They compared it to all the quad cores kind of going up the line. And basically what they showed is in most games, it actually isn't really that much slower. Like, it's very rare games that it's faster, and when it is faster, it's not nearly, or newer processors aren't nearly as fast as you think they are. For gaming purposes. Now, for video rendering, for 3D work and stuff, totally different story. But for gaming purposes, if it was me, I would overclock the crap out of the 2500K, especially if you've gotten your money's worth out of it and you're ready to like experiment some. Now, he says it gets a little hot for his liking. We don't know what hot for his liking is, but like, I mean, if it hits 4.7, but it's hitting like 80 degrees Celsius under an 100% prime burn, I'd do it.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's definitely doable.
I mean, I've run things that hot for quite a while if I needed to. And during gaming, it'll never get as hot as it does under a prime burn. So right back in if your version of very hot is different than ours, but some people think like 60 degrees Celsius is very hot. And like, to me, that's like a road sign. You fly past at 100 miles an hour when you're trying to find out what the processor will do. So I won't tell you what to do, but I have run a 2500K at 5.2 for a brief amount of time. So I think there's a little more biscuit left in your processor.
There it is.
Ready to move on to the next one?
I think so. Let's do it.
All right. Alex writes in to casualshenanigans@gmail.com, just like you can, and says, "Hey guys, I really enjoy your content, and I've been watching all of your content since the first DayZ Survivor Diaries. Keep up the great work."
Nice.
I actually had a guy in the latest Potato Masher video I posted on Reddit. Someone popped in and said they were saying hi from the podcast. So hi to that person. Also, someone else hopped in and asked when we were going to do another DayZ series. It still blows my mind that as tiny as my channel was when we were doing DayZ, people still apparently enjoyed our DayZ stuff that much. So thank you guys.
But just that production value.
Anyway, so Alex wrote in a while ago and asked for suggestions for his rig. It was a rig with a really old AMD Athlon 2.4 gigahertz dual core and DDR2 RAM. He says, anyways, although you said you don't believe in bundles, I finally decided to purchase the one I thought was really good. Now, I don't remember us saying we don't believe in bundles.
Yeah, I don't remember this at all, actually. If it saves me money, I'll do it.
It might have been like a bundle he was looking at, maybe it was a bad deal. The thing with bundles, or maybe I said this about bare bones kits, they can be good if it's exactly what you wanted to get anyway. But it's rare that I would see a bundle where I think, oh, well, that's the ideal way to do that. Usually it's like a decent motherboard with really crappy memory, or a good CPU with a really crappy motherboard or something. Like, usually they're just not that great.
Yeah.
But as a whole, there's nothing wrong with a bundle. It's just you buy a couple things together and save a little money. Like, nothing wrong with that. So In theory, yeah. So he bought an Asus M5A78L motherboard. I don't really know anything about that, but it also has an AMD FX 6300 and 8 gigs of 1600 megahertz DDR3 RAM. This bundle cost £200 and he thought it was a really good deal. Performance is vastly improved on my PC. I can run most games on high at 30 to 60 FPS. I would like your opinion on this change, though. Feel free to call me an idiot for buying a bundle. You're not an idiot. I mean, Dave, what's the most important thing when deciding if you made the right choice upgrading?
Did the performance increase to what you were hoping for?
And do your games work?
Yeah.
So I would say our opinion on this change would be, if you are happy with the change for only 200 pounds and you got that much more performance, that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Also for 200 pounds, I don't know that you could do a ton better replacing the motherboard, processor, and RAM. Like,
yeah,
that's pretty good.
That's like all the core components right there.
Yeah. So the next thing I've decided to upgrade my rig is the graphics card, which leads me on to my first question. What card do I get? Currently, I have a 650 Ti with 1 gig of VRAM.
Woo!
I feel like it's time to upgrade since games are becoming more demanding. Hello, Alex. It's 2013. It was time to upgrade then. No, a 1 gig of VRAM, I'm actually impressed that he can still run games with 1 gig of VRAM these days.
Yeah, that's a lot of probably hard drive thrashing for loading textures going on there.
Yeah, probably. He said, I'd greatly appreciate any suggestions you throw my way. I'm looking for a part-time job at the time of writing, so money isn't really an issue, just as long as it isn't too expensive and it has good performance. And second question, is it possible to overclock the processor, and is it worth it? If it's possible and you recommend doing it, can you guide me through the process? We can't guide you because every motherboard is going to be a little bit different, but your processor will overclock if your motherboard will let it. So just Google your motherboard with FX 6300 and see overclocking. A mild overclock is very easy on most processors if the motherboard will allow you to. So if you're at 3.5 gigahertz, I bet that thing can be running at 4 to 4.2 gigahertz in 5 minutes, no issues. But Dave,
yes,
with no set budget in mind, he's got a 650 Ti looking for a pretty cheap upgrade. What are you feeling?
You think you could push to a 960 possibly?
Oh, you weren't going for cheap there. I was thinking like 750 Ti.
Ooh, you're thinking a little bit lower than I am. I mean, he's got a pretty good bundle deal here, and I mean, 960s go for. Let's take a look here.
Well, I'll just throw this out there. You know, I like the 950. I'm a 950 man here. The EVGA 950, the really short single fan one that I like, is 140 on Newegg.
That's pretty good.
With a $10 rebate, but it's 140. Although he is in.
I'm looking on PC Part Picker now for the UK.
Okay, I was gonna say, oops, he's probably in the United Kingdom. The Zotac 950 is 125 pounds.
Let's see what the 960 would be. You could get a 960 for 150 pounds. That's not bad at all.
That's actually not bad.
I'm always the kind of person where it's like, if I can get something nice now, that's pretty good. But if I can like save for a month or so and get something that's like very nice, I'll definitely go for the wait and save just a tiny bit more option. Like, that's just how I roll.
Now, I'm going to say he should not. Actually, you know what? Here's a reason why maybe he shouldn't get a 950. 2 gigs of VRAM. And actually, that's going to be our little topic after we answer a couple more questions. I want to talk about VRAM for a few minutes. Sexy. Do you think you should get a 4 gig card? Because the cheapest one is a gigabyte 960 that's 162 pounds.
In 2016, the minimum VRAM that I would go for is probably 4 gigs. Yeah.
If you have a choice. It doesn't mean other ones won't work, but like, if you can, that's probably best. So if you're gaming
a decent amount now and you're planning on gaming a decent amount going into the future, be a little bit more future proofed and go for the 4 gigs is what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the cost of everything else, almost the cost of everything else you bought. So if you're like, no, I absolutely can't do that, that's okay. I would look for a 660 Ti. Like if you need a used old card or something, you know, don't worry about it. Write back in, let us know. We'll write back to you. We'll work it out. But if you can, 960 with 4 gigs, pretty good. Before we like commit him to that one though, what's AMD got? Because they offer more VRAM in significantly cheaper cards, I'm pretty sure.
That's very true.
Yeah, okay.
Let's ask the AMD expert on the show.
The MSI R7 370.
Okay.
has 4 gigs of RAM, and or VRAM is 140 pounds. But, one second, a Nantec GPU bench is what I use when I'm trying to compare 2 cards. I don't like stuff like GPU Boss because it uses kind of arbitrary metrics that don't really answer your question. They're just like, it's got more shader cores. Great. Is it faster? But Nantec's GPU bench, they actually run benchmarks. So the 960 is faster than the 370 by a fair little bit there. Well, 370 is quite a bit cheaper. Let's see. 370 will also add in, what are 380s going for? Okay, the cheapest 380 is 150. The cheapest 380 for 160 for the same price, you can get an R9 380 with 4 gigs of RAM. Same price as that 960.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how fast that is. It is. They trade back and forth depending on the games. Okay, you're fine with the 960. Don't worry about it. After all that, he also sent us a picture of a turtle. So thanks for the picture of the turtle.
Wait, bonus turtle?
Well, it's a stega tortoise, technically. It's a turtle with a, yeah.
I'll accept it. Yeah, that's fine.
Up next, Adam writes in, says, I'm upgrading my GTX 760 Ti, which I'll stop you right there. Was there a 760 Ti? Because I don't remember that.
That's a great question. I mean,
if only there was some way we could find out.
I can't think of anyone else who had one though. Like,
it's an OEM card, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting. I've honestly never heard of this card.
Yeah, I've never heard of it either.
It looks like it may have been an Alienware card. Huh. Possibly. So, or maybe it was sold in a different country. He, I think, is from Canada, it looks like, based on his PC part picker list. So maybe this is a thing where you are. Maybe it's just a 760. Who knows? Anyway, I'm upgrading my GTX 760 Ti to a 970 in preparation for the VR verse for virtual reality. I've been very happy with the 760. I want to make a new build around this spare GPU for my brother. So we're not actually dealing with Ray's build. Although
gotcha.
He signs it Ray, but it says it's from Adam. So we'll go with Ray because that's how it's signed. So Ray has a budget of about 550 Canadian dollars. And they have sent us this budget. Now, do you have that link?
I do.
Okay.
And a warning that both of course, the GPU cost is not there, but his RAM is also not showing up. On the list.
Interesting.
It's been, a little while since the email, so.
Yeah. I'll add a little more RAM, but can you go through the rest of the list?
Yeah. We have an Intel Core i3 6100, comes stock at 3.7 gigahertz. Zeus H110M, Seagate Barracuda 1 terabyte, a Cougar MG100 micro ATX mini tower case. I guess his micro ATX board would in fact fit that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that brand, but
Cougar. EVGA 500 watt 80 plus certified ATX power supply. It's funny that I guess 80 plus is the certification. There's like no like bronze or anything rating. It's just 80 plus certified.
I mean, that used to be pretty good, didn't it? I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, it's EVGA. It can't be horrible, And then a gigabyte wireless card, which is strangely $45. Seems a little steep, right?
It does. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna preemptively swap that out for a USB wireless network adapter. But what do you think about the rest of the list?
I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect. The hard drive, the micro ATX stuff is an interesting choice. Maybe it's
small build, I guess.
Yeah. It's not like a top tier VR build or anything like that. So it makes sense. That's kind of a cool choice. The i3 6100. Is it hyper threaded too?
Yeah, it's an i3. It's a dual core hyper threaded. It actually performs very closely to a stock 2500K in Digital Foundry's gaming benchmarks. So
So that's pretty solid right there.
Yeah, I'd keep that probably.
I think that's a nice list right there, right off the bat.
Yeah, I don't see any big issues with that. Now, I did make a couple swaps here. Let me send you a link to the new list.
Okay.
Here, I will send that to you. Over there. Okay. So I've swapped out his network adapter for a TP-Link USB network adapter. There's no reason not to just use a USB one. Honestly, It's easier. And I've added memory that's in stock. I haven't touched anything else. He's at 487 Canadian dollars. No rebates or anything factored in there. I'm seeing, does that give us enough leeway? Can we get a small SSD in there to reach his cap?
I think in 2016 we're at that point that we can.
Possibly. Now, what do you think about the case? It's a $50 case.
Let's take a look at the case here. The Cougar MG100.
I honestly don't know anything about it.
Opening up the Amazon link that only has one photo. It's got like a fake brushed steel look to it.
Mm-hmm.
Big front intake fan, which is good. USB 3 on the front. 2 external drive bays. Let's see if Newegg has more pictures. I want to see the inside. Does no one have any photos of the inside? It's got 4 out of 5 eggs on Newegg, so it's not an amazing case, but okay, yeah. Cons, few sharp edges to be expected. So, despite the lack of pictures, I would expect the inside to be your, traditional steel and aluminum, just bare metal, sharp edges.
Yeah, from looking at pictures on Newegg, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it, but it doesn't look like it's anything special. Cheap cases have come a long way, and maybe that's a pretty cheap one in Canadian dollars.
And it looks pretty big for a small case too, wouldn't you say? Like a micro ATX?
It looks big for micro ATX, sure. It looks more like a smallish mid-tower, but
yeah.
I did add a SanDisk 128 gig SSD, and that brings them up to $551.
Ooh.
So I'd say that's a very good deal. That's a very good build for the price.
I like it.
All right. We have one more question before we get into our topic of the night. Jacob wrote in and said, okay, so I've been listening to your podcast and I was wondering, this might be a dumb question since I'm not the biggest tech geek, but I am a gaming geek. And I was wondering if and how to build a PC that can support 2 games at once. I've seen it done, but I never got into how exactly to do it. I would love for you guys to throw around this idea and possibly a build on how to do this to run any 2 games. Example, I've been playing Siege, I think Rainbow Six Siege, and will want to play Division when it comes out. What would be the price for this and a build? I have both monitors and mice and Windows for both. Thank you in advance, Jacob.
This is a very unusual question. This is new territory right here.
Yeah.
So, okay, 2 games, 2 modern new games on the same computer on 2 different monitors. Am I following that right?
Yes. At the same time.
Okay, first, I'm going to ask why, because I'm actually really confused. I don't understand, like, maybe if you were playing a slower strategy game and you wanted to do other things at the same time, but I mean, these are 2 games here that kind of need your attention, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about like the technical parts of the question, but just right off the bat, I'm just very confused.
I'm a little bit confused about the why. It may be just a challenge if he wants to do it.
Okay.
I'm curious about the why of like how realistically are you going to be able to do that?
Because he mentions mice for both, and you definitely could not use a mouse on the same operating system for 2 different games, even in Windows at the same time. Like, your mouse is your mouse when it comes to Windows. Am I correct there? Like, there's no dual mouse.
I don't want to say that there's no way to do it because someone's probably made some app that'll do it. I'm going to Google that real quick. So he talked about 2 Ubisoft games. Talk about why that wouldn't work.
They're modern games, they're performance hogs. Is that what you're referring to specifically?
No, I was thinking he's going to be logged into Uplay trying to play 2 different games at the same time.
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, so you need two Uplay accounts, which that one's enough for anyone. Um, yeah, and if you're running the games in a window, you'd have to make it so that like the windows weren't capturing the mouse, and then you'd be scrolling out of the games constantly when you were actually trying to play them, and tabbing back and forth by accident is what I would imagine happening.
Well, this has just gotten interesting.
Oh no.
Pluralinput.com. Use multiple mice and keyboards on the same PC at the same time. This actually may not be that crazy, the technical side of it. So here's the thing, Jacob. I don't think this will work because of issues like Steam probably won't let you run two games at the same time, or Uplay won't let you run two games at the same time.
Steam does, actually.
Steam does. Okay, all right.
Yes.
So this maybe isn't that crazy. Maybe it's slightly unnecessary, but let's keep going down this rabbit hole. So, Plural Input works with Windows Vista up through 10. You get one cursor for each attached mouse. Support for multiple monitors. You can change the color, mouse acceleration, swap buttons, custom labels for each cursor, whatever you want. So if you have that, and if you can start two different games at the same time. So let's say the two games he wants to play, he can do it. And that's up to you, Jacob, for each individual game you want to use. Like, if you, we'll assume you can, and let's talk about what you need on a technical level. So I would say the first thing is, how do you feel about low settings?
Yeah, that's like just right off the bat what you can expect. I'd agree with that.
And you're also going to have to run stuff in a window. It could be, let's see.
And that, of course, means that, you know, at no point should you ever consider SLI.
Yeah, you'll never be able to do SLI. Your VSync options will be a little bit limited. You'll probably be stuck to like the double or triple buffering that normally comes when you run in a window, which does reduce performance normally. But you should have VSync. You won't have the clean look of it being not in a window unless you can do windowed borderless on each monitor, which in theory would work. But the biggest thing is you just need a really beefy computer, because unfortunately you can't like get a hexacore and give 3 cores to one game and 3 cores to the other.
Yeah.
Like if both games want, say, 4 cores, they're both going to be taking the first 4 cores, because that's just how stuff works. Dave, you have a hexacore. It's hyper-threaded.
Mm-hmm.
Can you play a game like while you're rendering a video? Can you do 2 pretty intensive tasks with it?
That is actually one thing that I have noticed is if I have a Vegas renderer going, I can play Fallout. You know, I get a frame rate drop. I'm closer to 30 than 60. Because it does fight for some of those base cores, and especially, you know, video programs actually use all the cores in most cases. But I've definitely run a couple games or CPU heavy renders at the same time. It's possible. You can expect lowered performance for everything all at the same time, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything goes down a few notches.
Yeah, I'm going to say, if you want to do it, I'd probably do a hyper-threaded quad-core or hexacore. I'm not going to give you an actual build list. If you're actually serious about doing this, write back to us with a budget, and we'll see if we could make it happen. But just understand your biggest problem is going to be the games themselves, not the hardware. But I'd probably go with a hexacore. 16 gigs of RAM should be okay. You know, most of the parts can actually be fairly normal. I'd get 2 1080p matching monitors, so the color and everything, color size, pixel pitch, everything's the same. And have fun, I guess.
Please write back and explain to us like what you would do with this build, because I'm really curious. Like, it's a fun technical question, but I'm still lost.
Yeah, because he says he has monitors and mice and windows for both. It's one computer, though. So you only need, I mean, the monitors, yes, but you don't need 2 copies of Windows. And you don't need a second mouse and keyboard unless you are going to be playing one game on one monitor and someone else is going to be playing one game on another monitor.
Mm.
If it's just you and you want to play two games simultaneously, just run them both in windowed mode and switch between them, I guess. But if it's two separate people, I mean, let me just put this out there. I don't know what your budget is, but you could probably just build two computers that could run games as well as one computer's going to run two games at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like two potato mashers would probably be better than an $800 budget will get you for running two games simultaneously.
I agree 100%. Unless we're just really missing something, that would be a much better option.
But we don't want, I mean, it's not a dumb question. It's just such an unusual question for an unusual set of circumstances. We can't give you a hard answer. But if you want to write back in and you're serious about doing it, we'll work with you on it. But yeah, it's one of those in theory things, but it's kind of like SLI, but probably way worse. In theory, it all works, but then when you try to work your way through it, you'll probably discover that it's a lot more hassle than you thought it was going to be, and it maybe isn't worth it. So, who knows? But, Dave, before we go tonight, let's talk about VRAM real quick. We had someone write into the podcast, into the Casual Shenanigans Gaming podcast, and they asked if we could talk a little bit about different computer components. Why are they important? What do they do? Like, educate people a little bit. So VRAM, that is video RAM. Now, can you explain from a 3D artist perspective, how is that different from system memory? What is it doing? And why do we need more than we used to?
Generally, with all of your PC's components, your CPU, your RAM, your graphics card, they're connected by what I'll just summarize as like pipelines, right? They can communicate with all the different components through connections. But ideally, you don't want your components having to, do handshakes and talk back and forth constantly. The more work, the more computations that you can keep on a specific part that's doing its job, the better. So what VRAM does is gives the graphics card memory that is its own memory right there that it can work with. And this is mainly used for things like, textures is the most common thing that's talked about when it comes to VRAM. When you're looking at all those fancy 8K Skyrim texture mods, all that is being crammed into your graphics card's VRAM, which is much faster than loading it off of the hard drive or off of system memory. You can display more textures, high resolution textures, more different textures all at the same time, the more VRAM that you have, without having to swap back and forth between components.
Now, why did VRAM requirements go up? It feels like they went up pretty fast in the past couple years. Would you agree?
Actually, yeah, definitely. And it's, a couple years back, you could get, your HD 8K Crysis 2 texture pack, right? If you were on PC, you could download that. If you had plenty of VRAM, you get your nice fancy textures. But one thing that the latest console generation has pulled off is they have a lot more memory overall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while console memory doesn't work exactly the same as it does on PC, it's generally the same concept. So games in general are able to use a lot more high resolution textures and more of them. And so we've seen an increase across the board of just the fidelity of textures in games, the sharpness, the resolution, and the different textures in games. And you've seen it right in your Potato Masher videos between consoles and PC, just the amount of texture improvements compared to the last gen of consoles, right?
Yeah. Oh, a huge improvement compared to the last gen. And now, I mean, it is getting to the point where 2 gigs of VRAM is almost becoming the minimum.
Yeah.
Like that's medium settings in a lot of games, which is kind of crazy. So it's definitely the type of thing where, because we were talking to the guy earlier who needs, who needs an upgrade, Alex. He's got a 650 Ti with 1 gig of VRAM. Memory is one of those things where you just have to have enough.
Yeah.
Like, if you have enough, it's fine. If you don't have enough, it's not fine. And you will know that. So 1 gig of VRAM is going to be not fine for a lot of games in the next year or two. So you can get 2 gigs. If you want to wait a little longer, you can get 4 gigs. I mean, Dave and I, I don't really think about VRAM that much when I buy cards because I normally flip them every 1.5 to 2 years.
Right.
You and I used to buy a little behind the curve and flip them and not worry about it, but now we are on, like, we have the fastest cards available for
We
gaming.
crept our way to the top.
Yeah, but I'm probably gonna flip mine. Mine's got 6 gigs of VRAM. I'm probably gonna flip it when the next gen comes out because I game at 4K and that little bit of extra speed helps.
And I'm only at 1440p, but I'm a settings whore, and I want that ultra option on the drop down. So
I mean, I'll say I hit 5 gigs of VRAM usage on a pretty regular basis. Like,
yeah,
it's not even that hard. So, yeah, I mean, it's VRAM. It's going way up. I think it's going to kind of stagnate around 5 or 6 gigs, though. People will have 8 gig cards, but I don't think you're really going to need those for like another 6 or 7 years. That's my guess.
I disagree completely, actually, because we were talking about some of this last night.
Okay.
I think Jeff was actually talking about one of our members of the Casual Shenanigans gang that plays a lot of the games with us. Jeff was talking about he'd heard that there was going to be kind of a plateau when it comes to game graphics, and I don't think that's going to happen because I think what we're going to see is visually we might kind of level off, but the scale of everything is going to keep increasing. You're going to have that Arma 3 8,000 meter draw distance with GTA 5 graphics and shaders all the way through. And I think that's why we're going to see VRAM keep racing up for the foreseeable future. That's just my opinion, though.
I think it'll keep racing up, though, because you think consoles will just start being a little bit behind again? I mean, do you think that's what's going to happen?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be a bit behind the curve. I think this generation is not going to last very long at all compared to the last gen. It's going to be expensive. And if there is a plateau, it's going to be an artificial one caused by the consoles, I think. And it's not going to last very long.
Well, and that happens every gen.
Yeah. Because if you look at a game like Fallout 4, which depending on the lighting and where you are in the game, it has some beautiful lighting at times. It looks fantastic, but bring up a scope and look at the next cell over that's not loaded in where you're not supposed to be scoped in looking at it, and it's blocky and low res. Well, if you ask the developer, okay, 80% of your market could load that next cell with almost full resolution textures, and that would look 20 times better. They're gonna jump all over that if it's an option.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I guess I'm a little skeptical, but what you're saying makes sense. But that's why you need VRAM. So I think our official recommendation is get 4 gigs if you can. If you have like an old 3 gig or 2 gig card, use it. I mean, I think the Potato Masher is going to last that long. Use it until you can't. But if you're buying a new card, aim for 4 gigs. If you're getting an AMD card, a lot of them have 8 gig options. Go ahead and get an 8 gig option if you think you're going to keep it that long. If you think, oh, well, I'm going to keep this for 2 years, and then I'll probably upgrade again. If you upgrade that regularly, then don't worry about it. Buy whatever's out, and it won't matter. But I don't think I'm ever going to have to upgrade my RAM for gaming purposes. My regular system RAM, switching lanes a little here. I think I'll probably upgrade it for productivity stuff well before I ever need to for games. I don't know about you, but
yeah,
I haven't felt like I've stressed mine for games much. But VRAM, yeah, that's especially as 4K. If it becomes more and more common, like I'm already using 5 gigs, so if someone wants to put out like an 8K texture pack for a game or something, like it's gonna be
Star Citizen.
Yeah, that's good. Oh man, I got to rant just a little bit here. So Star Citizen does not have an advanced graphics options menu. It has presets. That's it right now. It's pre-release.
Ooh.
It's pre-release, but that strikes me as very not PC Master Race compared to the rest of that entire game.
I'm sure it's coming. It is funny that it's not here yet, though.
Yeah. Jeez, Dave, what's going on with your phone there?
I'm just a popular guy, okay? It's actually Mark and Shane.
I see.
We're tossing back our post Rocket League, our post Rocket League glow is still going on, if you know what I mean.
Oh my. All right, well, that's the podcast, guys. We will have another one for you next week. If you want to get them a week early, you can always tune into the show. You can always go support us on Patreon, patreon.com/casualshenanigans. And you can throw us $1 or $2, and you can get the show early. For everybody else, enjoy the shows when they come out. We'll be back next week. Tune into Casual Shenanigans Gaming Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our YouTube channel. And until next time, Dave, what should everybody do?
They should stay casual.